Welcome to the Right People, Right Places podcast. I'm your host, Raul Mendoza, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Andrew Schwab. And the reason I have him on is today we're going to talk about intrapreneurship. Let me repeat again. Intrapreneurship, not entrepreneurship. And I'll give a little more definition there, but just to give a little bit of introduction, Andrew Schwab here has been an excellent intrapreneur. He's been exemplary. He is a career engineer, having worked for companies, both small and large, entrepreneurial and large corporate structures, and has consistently brought value to CEOs, entrepreneurs, and stakeholders throughout his career. And I thought, what better person to have on this podcast than Andrew? And he likes to think of himself as a recovering mechanical engineer. So tell me about that.
Short story. That's what I thought I wanted to be when I grew up. It didn't work out that way. It was just a little too slow for me. Even though I take some of the stuff I've learned from that and brought it to the world today that I'm in, it's just not a scenario that I wanted to stay in and hang out at. So,
hey, but it still comes in handy, I'm sure, in what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, it is engineering. You're a software engineer.
Engineering, yeah. I mean, I've used it to put tables and stuff together at some smaller places I've been. So yeah.
There you go. Sure. Engineering of all kinds.
All kinds.
So today we're going to talk about intrapreneurship. And in order to frame our conversation, I want to talk about entrepreneurship to bring a little clarity to intrapreneurship. So an entrepreneur, they take risk on their own. They secure their own resources. They have complete control and they have full ownership. So let's talk about an intrapreneur now. An intrapreneur, in their context, a company assumes the risk. They rely on company resources to innovate and make things happen. They work within the company structure and culture, and they have little to no ownership in the process. What are your thoughts on intrapreneurship?
Sometimes it's hard. So just to put a little bit more crisp on it, I view an intrapreneur as someone who is an entrepreneur at heart, but working within an existing organization. So they're not assuming that risk, as you said, but that does come with more guardrails and some more political capital that you might have to spend to do the actions or take the actions that you want, that you view are best.
Totally. Yeah, it's a different mindset. I think, when I think about intrapreneurship and entrepreneurship, both of them have to do with innovation.
Absolutely. Yep.
And the only another difference, or another way to say it, is an entrepreneur is taking on the burden to fund the innovation, whereas with an intrapreneur, the company is taking on that risk. Yep. So really, it's just a matter of preference, I think. I think the world needs entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs. And I would go as far as to say that a good entrepreneur has been a good intrapreneur at some point in their career.
I believe that's true. You've learned a lot of skills during your intrapreneurship that apply directly to entrepreneurship. However, there's a lot of levers now in entrepreneurship that you won't have, or you might need to gain access to while in an entrepreneurship situation.
Ooh, that's juicy there.
I'm thinking of if it wasn't for entrepreneurs, we wouldn't have the large companies that we know today. We just wouldn't.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have, Ford, GE comes to mind immediately, Johnson's, we wouldn't have those things. But now for those companies today, since they've grown so large, what would they be without intrapreneurs?
Right.
They'd be dead dinosaurs. They'd go the way of Enron.
Right? That's right.
You know what I mean? That's what they, our society needs both. If we're going to continue the way that we are today, we need both.
Totally.
You got to have someone starting the thing that's willing to accept that risk. And you also have to have those people within the organizations that are maybe, the risk is different, right? Because you are you're not necessarily putting money on the line, but there are definitely people who put their job on the line or their financial means on the line in a different way to stick their neck out and try something.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. I love the way you brought distinction and value to both in that what you said just now. I think it's so helpful. I think a lot of the times people can think about these two things or these two topics of entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship kind of at odds with each other, but actually they're not at odds. They actually need each other, you know, and I think the way you expressed it there is so well said.
Yeah, and you've got like, there's another like mix in there a little too of the companies like Y Combinator. They're a company that's just there to help entrepreneurs get funding to accelerate because they've already gotten past a certain point. Those companies exist everywhere, right? Like that's just the software version of it. Google's one of those places. If you want to look at another, or Amazon, like they're absolutely paying people within their organization to run with an idea to figure out if it's actually something they can do something with, right? They can make work.
Yes. I think a good direction for our conversation is even just going through some of these, because we're not going to talk about the skills needed to be a successful entrepreneur today. I think it'd be helpful to identify the skills that are needed to be a successful intrapreneur. And I think I think both of them are similar, but it's a different context, right?
I think one thing to distinguish them even further, entrepreneurship, you are just, I'm thinking sole proprietor, right?
Yep.
Someone who's just jumping in. Raul, maybe you know someone like that.
Yeah.
But you've got sole proprietor who is just going to jump in and go, like assume the risk and run. When you're in a situation for entrepreneurship, you can assume the risk and run, but you also have the weight of the organization around you potentially pushing back. So that's good. It's not just the having the desire to do it. You have to find a place. And I think that's what I've been successful at so far in my career, as someone who wants to do it this way or wants to be an entrepreneur, is that you're finding a location that you can hang your hat, that you can go and do it and not get the pushback. Because I will tell you, I was incorrect in choosing a location once for my employment. And that tenure wasn't very long because the things that we wanted to do as a team, that once we were all on board, it was moving glaciers all the time. And moving glaciers all the time leads to burnout, and you'll find somewhere else where it's easier.
I think that's a fantastic thought that you just brought up, because I think there is the element of value alignment here.
Yeah.
There has to be a value alignment. You can't be an entrepreneur everywhere. One, because companies don't foster an environment of innovation.
Yeah.
But two, their values and what they hold true to, their true north, may not be what you hold dear and near.
Exactly.
So if those things aren't aligning, then it makes it difficult. It's an uphill battle. I mean, nonetheless,
every day,
entrepreneurship, you're innovating. So that's an uphill battle. You still have to have conversations to garner finance to get whatever idea it is that you're trying to get off the ground. You have to have buy-in from stakeholders. So again, those same mechanics, for the entrepreneur, they're having to figure out what their market is. And
that's the thing that's rolling through my head right now. Like the corollary is an entrepreneur is looking for a location, a place to go that is going to allow them to stretch their wings out and try, fail, right? And push the boundary. Whereas an entrepreneur is doing that same thing. However, but their thing is they're trying to find their market, their niche. Like, what is the thing? Like, who's the market that's buying what I have to offer?
Right. It's like they're looking for their audience. The entrepreneur has a captive audience, and how can I impress this captive audience?
Is it a square peg round hole situation, right? Or is it an oval hole round hole? It's close enough. So.
There's that recovering mechanical engineering coming through there. Good stuff. Well, let's continue on this conversation, Andrew. I think this is really great stuff. I think even we're talking about values, our own values, but also a company's values. Let's continue in this thread and even just talk about some of the challenges of working through a corporate structure, because that doesn't necessarily exist within a small, agile, maybe a 15 to 20 person organization. There's less things to check off, right?
My experience in those situations, being an entrepreneur is easy, right? Because you don't have those layers of bureaucracy. The politics don't exist. You have direct access to the people you need, or if you don't have direct access, you just walk over, right? You call them on the phone because everybody knows everybody. There's no, oh, you have to talk to John before you can get to Sally, right? Like that type of situation. Or no greasing palms, right? Whatever that loophole might be to get to particular people within an organization. So also those smaller organizations tend to be more risk tolerant.
Right. That's a good point.
Because think of it, like you're in a small company, you may have a couple $1 million run, right? And you're going for it. Everybody's all in.
Yep.
Because if you're not all in, those people get weeded out really quickly. And if they don't, that's a problem, right? Like that's something you should have identified, or the organization should have identified. They're more tolerant to risk because they're taking on a risk by employing 15 people, but not having enough money to employ them for the next 10 years, right? Like that's a risk. Or they're more likely to have an amount of debt, right? That is being carried. That's a risk.
Absolutely.
Right? Like their financial risk, because that's what everybody understands in business, right? But it's something that they're fine with you taking risks, because they are also, the organization, those at the top of the organization, are also taking a very similar risk by trying to find their market fit, by trying to find what a product is that they can actually sell, right? Like what's feasible to build. All those things. Like depends on what market you're in. We're just so happen to be coming from software.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's so good. I appreciate you walking us through those different perspectives of small and big size, and just some of the challenges that you have to walk through to be successful. Less red tape with a smaller company, a little more red tape and a little more polish that you need to convince the powers that be to make things happen.
There's another thing that's coming to mind, like in those medium to larger companies, a lot of people have, or maybe not a lot of people, but several people in the organization have the same mindset. You just have to find the right ones. It's harder to find them, right?
Ooh, that's interesting. So tell me about how you find those people.
Great question. I'm going to say interviewing them, but I don't mean like sitting down and drilling them with questions like you're in a booking room or something like that. Interviewing them in the sense of just like, where do they stand? Like, how do they feel about this place? What are their priorities? What are their values? Like, I'll tell you my most recent experience. I just joined an organization in the last couple of months, and I didn't know exactly what to expect. I knew what I wanted to do. I had an idea of what they were doing. And as I learned more, I was kind of interviewing some of the people around me. Just, hey, how's it going? You want to get a coffee, whatever. And I came across a gentleman that's actually higher up in the chain than I am, who was like, have you ever read this book? And I was like, nope, never read that book. And he's like, oh, it's really interesting. This is how I want to run the organization from his book location down. I was like, okay, great. So what I do, I went and read that book. Yeah, it's exactly what I want. Like I identified a person who's right alongside me that wants to move fast. They want to break things, and they don't want to be a top-down leader, right? Which is great because I'm under him in some regard. Like I don't want a top-down leader. I've had those jobs.
Totally.
I've left those jobs.
That's fantastic. Intentional networking is kind of like the word that came to mind as you were sharing that. I mean, you have to do that to find your job.
Yep.
You have to do that in order to, maybe you're faced with a problem that you don't have the skills to solve. And so where are those people that have that knowledge? Well, you're intentionally networking to find those people, right?
And even like as in my role, I joined a small team. There's 5 or 6 of us. I don't remember the count exactly. I knew one of them already coming in, and I'd already asked her those types of questions, like what's going on here? How's it going? And she gleaned some insight. So like I wasn't going in blind, but as soon as I got there, like, who's the person who's been here longest? I want to talk to them first. Like, they're in my direct sphere. Who are the people that are like this? Here's kind of like what I like to do. What do I need to do? How has it been in the past, right? Like, give me what's a short version of the history here? Even if that person might not be the mindset that I am, they at least know the rules, like know what the organization's about and what they care about.
Totally. And having various perspectives to kind of color in the picture.
Yeah, exactly.
And, whether or not that person's going to be the person that aligns with your vision or what your values, they'll give you a sense of within the corporate structure of how things have been or how things have not been.
Exactly. And their view might be siloed too, because there's one organization I've been in, like, there was thousands of people I never even heard their name, right? Like, never. And I will never know if they ever worked there at the same time unless I looked it up on LinkedIn.
Totally.
Like, that's the only time it happened. Exactly. Like, oh, you were in Austin. Okay, great. I had no idea we even had people in Austin, right? Like,
totally.
that type of stuff. So that person's view is going to be locality. Like, there's a locality to their position, right? Because they've lived it in the area that you're also going to be living in.
Right.
So
that's
finding
really good.
Because if I was quizzing you and you were in the LA office, like, the LA office might be entirely different than the one in the Midwest, right?
Yep.
Completely different.
Subcultures. I think
exactly.
The bigger a company gets, the bigger they can have an overarching sense of what their culture is, but then within that culture, there's subcultures, and you have to get to know those pieces of the organization because they give definition to what they're doing and how you can maneuver through it to achieve the goals that you want to achieve that are going to be both beneficial to the company and beneficial in terms of your fulfillment in the work that you're doing.
And sometimes just talking till you're blue in the face until people around you decide, like, that's an interesting idea, right?
That's good.
Just keep planting those seeds.
It's interesting. The thing, something that's kind of crescendoing for me, this idea as we're talking is, and I can't actually take ownership for this. Well, you and I both knew an executive that talked about being the CEO of your own desk.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was the topic I was thinking of too.
Yeah. Which I think whether you're an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur.
Well, entrepreneur, you have to be CEO.
Yes. You're like, it is your responsibility, but as an intrapreneur, having that same mindset, you're in your lane, you're still bringing value, but you're owning it like an entrepreneur owns the risk in the business.
Totally. Yeah. The risk, like in my position now, I'm a team lead. So I don't have anyone reporting to me, but the technical direction of this stuff is all on me. And, or I should say the team and I, but if something happens, it's my name is the one that comes up, right? Even if I never touched it, it's still my responsibility. Like, I also view it as having that type of responsibility and being in that position. Like, you need to teach the people below you or around you. I'm not even going to say below because they don't report to me, but around you, like, this is how we operate and this is why we operate. And in my short tenure, it's like, I've had similar conversations with the same people, not like in a negative way, like, Raul, you're doing that again. No, it's like here's why we do it. The constant reinforcement of, you want to be the best. This is how I know you get to be the best.
That's fantastic.
You want the agency? Don't ask for the agency. Go take it. Go build something. Maybe use your own time a little bit. Do it over lunch, right? Like, you want to prove out an idea and you want to blow someone's fucking mind. Go build something. Even if it's a piece of crap, it doesn't matter. Like, that's the field that we're in is take it. Don't ask.
Totally.
Take it.
And I think I love that. I felt some passion in what you were saying.
I'm passionate about taking it.
I'm loving
that's
that you're
one of
saying
my interview questions. How much do I have to ask for? If I take it, is that a problem? No. Great.
And that goes back to another topic that we talk on this podcast, and that's leadership, and again, the same executive that we've both had the privilege of working with said that leadership isn't given, it's taken. you know?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And I think that it just in these, let's stop putting these roles at odds. Everyone has talents, gifts, abilities, and timing happens to everyone. And whether you're on the entrepreneur side of things or the intrapreneur, both of these are needed to build successful business. Let's not do a comparison and minimize what we bring to the table, because I think that can happen. You know what I mean? I know that in my years of being an intrapreneur, I've compared myself to entrepreneurs, and I've thought to myself, well, I'll never be this. I'll never be this, because they are an eloquent speaker. They can sell with their eyes closed. They can do this.
Record a podcast.
They can record a podcast, and the thing is, though, timing happened, for me, timing happened where the stars aligned, circumstances came to be where there was an opportunity for me to take on the risk. And here I am as an entrepreneur. Do I feel ready? No, but
ready as I'll ever be.
Exactly. Yeah. Ready as you'll ever be. But I think you need, I think the reason I'm sharing all this is because I think there's a symbiotic relationship between intrapreneurship and entrepreneurship. And if you really commit to the process of entrepreneurship, you can become a successful entrepreneur. Or likewise, I've met an executive that works for a large brewing company in Milwaukee who started off as an entrepreneur and basically did that for a few years and realized, you know what? I don't like this. Yeah. I don't like the risk of building my own business and having my own freedom and having my own control. I actually just want to be within a corporate structure and just dealing with ideas and executing on ideas. So that's what they decided to do, and they love what they're doing and they're growing significantly. So anyway, I feel like
Yeah. I mean, actually, I was going to say, I don't think it's just one or the other.
Yeah.
One of my absolute favorite managers I've ever had. He was my first one as a mechanical engineer. No, I started there as an intern, and he was a mechanical engineer before. He decided at a time, he was like, I'm just kind of done with the corporate thing. He was a very handy guy, as many mechanical engineers are, and opened his own little cabinetry shop and started doing that. And he was doing that. He did it for 7 or 8 years. And then when it came time, his boys were growing up and he wanted some more time with them, or whatever the reasons were at the time, it's I think I'm done doing this. And he went back into the corporate structure and started doing mechanical engineering again.
That's
it's
so
not
cool.
like you drop it.
Yes.
You don't flip a switch and it's gone. It's just a different times call for different measures, right?
Yes. I think it's a mindset. At the end of the day, it's a mindset. And I think sometimes being in the environment of entrepreneurship where you're shouldering the burden, that might activate things that you wouldn't be forced, that wouldn't be activated unless you were in that environment. And then sometimes in intrapreneurship, maybe there's a problem that's before you because you're in an organization where your values align and all of a sudden you're activated and you're connected to what's happening. Yeah, you may not be as interested in the product that the company is pushing, but you're interested in that problem that they're trying to solve. And that's valuable. Both have value, right?
Yeah. And it all comes down to what do you need at that time, right? And sometimes it's not either of those things and you want to work at Quick Trip. You want to be a manager. That's fine too.
Yeah.
It's got to suit your needs and it's got to be something that you find exciting, because if it's not exciting, you're not going to want to solve it.
Yeah. Right? I mean, all of this, I think, is interesting because it goes back to just being intentional. And I think that's what can happen with people that are in, so to speak, the rat race of corporate America.
Yeah.
They miss the opportunity to innovate because they've turned that part off. And that's where it's no, you're the CEO of your own desk. You have the choice to make this happen or not. Like you were saying earlier, take it, take it by both hands. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is because I want to inspire people that are maybe in a corporate setting who
Yeah.
have lost their ambition, they've lost the excitement. And I want them to look again, that there's an opportunity. There's a problem to solve there if you have eyes to see it, right? And even for the entrepreneur that maybe is weary and in the journey and they've had some successes,
Looking
but
for a little, I need a little bit more gas in the tank.
Yeah,
I can do this.
yes, yeah. And maybe that time is expiring for them and it's time for them to make the leap back into corporate life. That it's not the end of the story just because you went from entrepreneur to intrapreneur. Actually, it's the beginning of a new chapter. So
Yeah, it's all those things, right? Like it's everything and nothing all at once.
totally.
Because ultimately, like, what are you trying to do? What do you want to be when you grow up?
Yep.
That's the question I ask myself at least once a week. What do you want to be when you grow up? I haven't grown up yet, so I'm not going to try now.
Yeah, satiating that curiosity. And at the end of the day, one of the things that both an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur share is curiosity. And
yeah, I can't speak for everybody who's done this, but that's my thing. Like, I just want, I want to know more.
mm-hmm.
Not satisfied. Like there's no such thing as satisfied in my life. Like it just doesn't happen. Like I just got to keep going till the next thing is there. And you've got to that step and now it's like, oh man, all right, here's the next thing, right? I want to know more about this thing. And it's like here we go again. We're getting back on the roller coaster.
So yeah, I think this is a great spot we've come to in this conversation, Andrew, about curiosity. I think successful intrapreneurs and entrepreneurs are curious. And I think within the corporate structure or maybe even within entrepreneurship, there can come a point where the drive and curiosity could just go. How do you stoke that again?
The way I do it myself is, and I know this won't apply to everybody, is I just go start trying things that are outside my comfort zone.
Oof.
What's a thing that I haven't either done in maybe in a long time that was maybe uncomfortable the first time, or B, what's just a general area that's interesting and I don't know anything about. So this actually, I'll just give a story.
Yeah, stories are
this
great.
This happened recently. Software development to me is it's not really hitting the keyboard anymore and making stuff. Like my goal now is, how do I get the next person or the people around me to be better than I am, faster than I could get there, right? I think that's a big part of leadership too, is like showing them that there's that path to go. And recently I was like, I'm just kind of bored with hitting the keyboard. And I've now in this role of like, I want to learn more about how people operate, how people tick, because I don't type a lot anymore. The messages I type are not software. They are to other people. And like, so I've been trying to learn as much as possible about like individuals. What's the thing and the task that I've brought on of this insatiable?
Yeah, insatiable. That's the word.
Curiosity is like everybody on my team now. I'm trying to pin them down to like, what type of person are you?
I love it.
Like I've got one guy who is like, I probably worked there 3 weeks and I'm like, dude, you're a person who doesn't like any gray fuzzy area, black and white data. You want it. He's like, yep, you nailed me. I was like, great, I knew that. Like that. So learning techniques to get it out of them, or like to ask those questions, because in software development or engineering in general, you've got many quiet people that work around you or that are there that aren't necessarily open.
Diamonds in the rough.
Not even diamonds in the rough.
Hidden.
Like, just quiet.
Yeah.
Like they are not type A personalities.
Right.
They're not going to stand up. They're not going to be the first one to raise their hand or make a comment about something. How do we get that person to be at least comfortable opening up by us? I'm not saying you got to go give the, end of the year financials for the group. Like, I don't want that either. Like, that's not my desire. But at least feel comfortable to say like, Raul, no, you're wrong. I believe you're wrong, and not have it come off as like a burn,
right?
Like a complete sting. But that's been what I'm curious about, and getting away from the actual software itself and finding more about the people.
I love that. I think, again, it just goes back to what this podcast is all about. It's about people, the right people and the right places. I say this to the clients that I work with people that I collaborate with. If you don't have the right people, you're not going to have the right place, because you can't build a culture without people, and I think what you're doing there is you're nurturing things in people, and that's actually going to have an impact in the work that you're doing. It's going to have an impact in inspiring them to actually step into maybe something that's uncomfortable, for them to realize, wow, I'm actually good at this. Or, you know what? I need to speak up more, because I've got things to say. I've got things to bring. And I love that. It's not just about the work. It's about the people.
No, the work is just a byproduct of people being together.
Yeah, man, that is just a fantastic place to call it.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me, man.
Andrew, it's been a pleasure. And yeah, let's do this again. We'll have to reconnect at another time.
I'm in. Just tell me when.